less concerned with my jamming beats of that opening intro, then you can hear me for this. Justin, thank you for confirming. All right, folks, we are. Oh, my audio seems low. Huh. See if I can turn up just a bit. Okay. I'm paranoid about audio. I've had problems on the on my side with it coming through properly, and also having it be way too loud for folks listening. So I'd almost rather have it be a little bit too quiet than I blow your speakers out or scare any animals that are around you. So welcome. This is a Know Your Content video. I will be doing kind of a series on this throughout the year that describes different types of content in Confluence. I found this interesting to go through because I'll tell my story about learning Confluence, but each of these content types have different things they can give us. Oh, thank you, Justin. And, Confluence, we tend to think of it as a place we go to add a page, and that is a stereotypical piece of content, just a blank page like a Word doc or a Google doc. But there are other content types in there, and even within pages, there are things we may not know because we haven't explored them or been shown them. Do your learners know of a volume level on their side? Your computer volume, Liz? Noreen, welcome from Manila. I haven't been there in a while, but beautiful part of the world. So we're going to dig into Confluence blogs today. Personally, I find blogs to kind of be the forgotten content type, and I'll have some questions in here asking folks about how you utilize them or what you think they're for. But we're going to get started talking about Confluence blogs, what they are, how we can use them, that kind of thing. Welcome, Kaithra. Is it always your left hand waving, or is it sometimes the right one and you just turned around? I can't tell. By way of quick introduction, my name is Rob. I've been using Confluence for about 10 years. I hold the only certification Atlassian currently has for Confluence, which is the ACA 920, I think it is. I'm also a subject matter expert on Confluence for them, so I help do things like build out their exam guides and things. I started using Confluence because I was forced into it. I started using SharePoint early in my career, and then I changed jobs, and they had Confluence, and that was wonderful, but no one taught me how to use it. And that's why I do these courses. So people like past me don't have the frustration and the challenge of how do I use this tool? I found how to use it by doing, and that works for Rob. I understand that doesn't work for a lot of people. Now, I actually use Confluence blogs. That's my fun fact for this one. And again, I was only half joking when I say this is kind of the forgotten content type. And we already have Justin answering questions that I haven't asked yet, which I absolutely love, which brings me to interaction. I really enjoy using YouTube because I can communicate with a lot of folks, and you can view this later. However, I can't see or hear you. So please use the chat. It should be in a menu kind of that way to my left on the right side of your screen. Please use it to ask questions. Please use it to drop comments. And please interact with each other. There is a group you are already seeing chatting who has been in these several times with me, which is great. But I'll encourage other folks who maybe haven't jumped in yet or are brand new to also use the chat to ask questions or share your knowledge. There are a lot of really smart people in the chat that can help us out. And that's one thing I love about this. I get to learn from them as well. So please use the chat. I'll also be dropping things like links to other resources. We have, for example, a Discord group for live chat in between these sessions. Got about 100 folks in there, fairly active, helping each other out, which is great. And of course, if you like this particular session, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't, but also share it with other people. It's really great that we all help ourselves, but helping other folks makes it even better and amplifies what we know. So that's how we can interact. A very quick agenda. We'll briefly talk about what Confluence is, just to make sure we all understand at a high level. And then we'll just talk about blogs. What is a blog? Why do we blog? What does it look like in Confluence? And then how do we create them? And then I'll be using Confluence Cloud Premium to show you all of that. Now, I won't use anything in Cloud Premium you can't use in free or standard. If I do, I'll call it out. The biggest thing that I might use is Atlassian Intelligence AI. So I might show how to use that. But otherwise, all the features I show you, making a blog, things like that, are available everywhere. They should also be available in Data Center. I'm not as familiar with Data Center though, so I can't guarantee I'll accurately call everything else out. So just to kind of warm up question, what do you use Confluence? And if so, what for? And I'll see if I can use this fun, where is it, Q&A question. I'm not 100% sure how this works, but I have a little button that lets me put in a quick little survey in the chat. So also curious of how this looks to all of y'all, and if it makes sense for me to keep trying to use it. But please ponder that question. Feel free to drop it in the chat or on that Q&A. This is an important question to consider, even though it is a system like Confluence, what we think of as a knowledge base, because how we choose to use systems or what we are using them for can help dictate what we want to do with it or how we're going to use it. And this is what many groups, at least in my experience, haven't considered. They get Confluence because they have Jira. Great. And then they don't go through that process of what do we want to do with it, or why do we have it? We have this tool, what are we going to do? Documenting software, that is a great thing. I have that exact thing. Processes, stories for Jira. I like that, Amy, building out the Jira tickets. Team information, dashboards, and solution architecture. I like pulling in the dashboards. There's a lot of great ways to blend data into Confluence. And there's a lot of, I do that with blogs, and I'll talk about how I use blogs shortly. How-tos for help desk. That's one of my major use cases, Noreen. Typical tech writing. I love that, Dave. I'm chuckling because I am aware that technical writing is a thing. To me, it's just some kind of wizardry magic. I've had folks in the chat help me improve decks, and I look at what they say. I'm like, it looks so much better now, and I never saw it. Tina, welcome. I appreciate you raising your hand and saying, hi, I'm a beginner, just trying to figure this stuff out. It's important that we're honest with ourselves when we don't know something. We're able to ask for help so we can get better. Emily H., welcome. Good to see you again, my friend. Knowledge base internally and for customers. Love it. Confluence is not just a knowledge base in my mind. They're starting to push it more into the collaboration platform, so you hear me call it that thing. But there's no real wrong way to use it. Again, we want to just consider how our teams use it. For me, it is the best. Amy, I do have some links. I'll talk about additional resources later, and I'll drop some links right now in here for you. I have an entire course on Udemy dedicated just to this, but my entire YouTube channel has a lot of other great stuff. So please check out the channel, and I'll dig up some links and just drop them in the chat for you so you have access to them. And I'll also share my email at the end of this, so if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out. And that Discord thing that I mentioned is also good. I know I just dropped a ton on you right there. But Confluence is also a central place for people to go. I'll use Amy's team as an example to get information. So you can just tell the team, hey team, we need to go to Confluence, and that's where we're going to store all of our playbooks. There's a link to that Udemy course, Amy, 4 hours of how to use Confluence. Now, within Confluence, we have this concept of a space, and this is important to blogs because every piece of content lives in a single space. So I don't just put content in Confluence, I actually put it in a space, and the space is just a way to organize it. I think of a space like a library, or a Confluence like a library, and then a space in there is a book. Not a book, is a room or a shelf. And that is a way to organize content, and it's a way to help our teams understand where are the things that we need. For example, I may have a space for my human resources team that includes all of their policies, and those policies are the things that they maintain and they share out. They may have a different space that is just for the HR team, and that's important because they have sensitive things that they only want the HR team to see. I may have a different space entirely that is for my engineering team, and a different space entirely for a project to build new Udemy courses. I'm making up examples, and a different space entirely for my own personal musings on how Confluence should be used. So there's no wrong way to use a space. However, they tend to be aligned by team, project, or other grouping. And this is where, when we consider our blogs and deploying content, we need to think through who's expected to be in here and what are they going to get out of it. And that brings us to content. I mentioned content lives in spaces. There are many kinds of content, and that's why this series, Know Your Content, is being put on, so you can learn each of them. But most types of content will appear in this thing called the content hierarchy, and that's what's hanging out kind of in this screenshot. I'll show the content hierarchy live, Um, and then I'll explain how blogs are actually different. Knowledge base basics. And another link for you, on knowledge base basics that will also help you understand how to set it up. Wow, so much chat. I love this. Tina, using Confluence for customers' documentation and how-tos. That is possible, Tina. Depending on how you want to share it, you're going to want to consider your security setup, though. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this. Again, I'll drop that Discord link again. That's going to be a great spot to go if you can get into Discord, or I'll send my email at the end of this, or just drop it in right here. Feel free to shoot me an email with questions and follow-ups. I love how the chat is just like doing this demonstration for me, or doing this for me. Kythro, you're stealing my thunder here, and I absolutely love that. I'll come back to that comment in a bit if I can, my friend. Blogs are a certain type of content, and they are similar to but different from pages. You'll notice in this screenshot, they have their own section called blogs. Now, they don't show up in the content hierarchy the same place as other content. They show up underneath it. And this is good and bad. It's good because the use case for a blog is different. We'll talk about that in a minute. How do we get people to read your blog posts? Well, you just asked nicely, Dave. You have to go to everyone in your company and ask them, Dave, please read my blog. And then they do. It takes a long time, but it gets there. Sorry, the folks in the chat here. Now, they're organized chronologically. And this is where, when I think of a blog, it's different than a page. And it gives us a different way to structure and think about our information. But first, a quick question. Can I get rid of this? Yeah, I'll get rid of that. Oh, I can add more questions? That's kind of... Wait, can I? Nope. Okay, I'm just going to end that thing. So my next question, what does the term blog come from? And this is more of a trivia question. And this is a throwback to the 90s, I think. Emily's already throwing shade, and we're only 13 minutes in, and I haven't had nearly enough coffee. How do you even know what my information architecture is, Emily? All right. Yeah. So my understanding is it comes from the term web log, and that got smashed together over time into blog. As I was growing up, web logs became a thing. Blogs, there were services like LiveJournal, which I think is still around. And then Twitter was originally called a microblogging site. It was limited to 128 characters or whatever it was. But when we think of a blog, for me, it helps to understand this term. It's a log of something, a recording. If I'm on a trip, I might keep a diary and I might write down something every day. My log of the trip. What did I do? A web log is just that online. So a little bit more serious question. Do you use Confluence blogs? And if so, what for? Kythra's sharing that she uses Slack or Teams to notify when a blog is posted. And where is Dave's original comment? Dave, it's kind of like... My response to this is only half joking. It's like any other content. If I want people to see and consume what I'm sharing, whether that's on YouTube or in my organization, I have to build awareness. And a lot of that, I was half joking about talking to folks. A lot of that is letting the team know, hey, team, every week I'm going to be sharing these blogs. And then, hey, team, every week you're going to see me put a link in Slack. And then, hey, team, we're going to be doing all these other things. So letting people know that you are using blogs for a particular thing will help them go and find it. Jessica uses a blog to let JSM, Jira Service Management agents know about updates. This is my use case, Jessica, not for JSM, but for projects. I personally use them quite a bit for project updates. And I've mentioned that blogs don't show up in the hierarchy, they show up underneath it. And there's no wrong way to use a blog, really. It's more just understanding the differences between blogs and pages. And one of the big ones is the blogs don't show up in the hierarchy. They're in a different spot. And that's okay, but if people aren't expecting this, they'll never find it, and they'll kind of forget they exist. Um, they are organized chronologically, which is nice, and this is one advantage of blogs. And I forget if I put in a slide in here. Okay, I did. I'll talk about the chronological organization soon. Now, they're similar to pages. I've mentioned this a few times. When you are editing a blog, it's really hard to know to tell visually, are you on a blog or a page? The big giveaway is it says blog post at the top. But except for that, it's going to pretty much be the same. You're going to have the same editor. You're going to have the same ability to restrict. The background of it's going to be the same color. Okay, no one listened to Justin. This is absolutely terrible advice. Fine, Justin, I'll amend my statement. There are, how do I put this in a way you're not going to twist the words somehow? Outside of things that are obviously a terrible idea, like storing plain text passwords, choosing to use, there's no there's no bad way to use the tool. I'll have to come back to this, my friend, but please do not store passwords in blogs. I'm just going to put that out there. Dave does a weekly tech writing post to a whole team. This right here, Dave, what you just put, teams have this content. Chad, teams will generate this great content, whether it's, here's what we did for the week, here's what the team did, here's a monthly update, and then it gets lost in Slack, or it becomes a page that gets buried under thousands of other pages, or in 3 months you can't find it. Putting it into a blog makes it very easy to see, and I'm going to skip ahead 2 slides, because you have this chronological order of things. You can go back in time and say, what was our year-end update for 2023? And it's going to live right under 2023. It'll be right there. Or you might say, what was our update last week to the project team? And you can go into 2025 and go find it. Now, when we think of Confluence, again, if it's like a library, that's going to be our source of truth. That's going to be where everything is. So as we're creating that information, we can drop it into the blog and then share that link in Slack. And then our team will go into the blog post, and that gives us some advantages too. We get things like analytics if we're on a high enough tier, but we can also then connect it to other content. So I'll show some macros in Confluence, some things we can add to the page to give us extra functions to help connect between things. All right, and the chat is now going down some random rabbit hole about Chad joining. Hi, Chad. Good to see you, my friend. And you did come in at a great time. Justin is telling the group to store passwords in plain text, which if someone could revoke his IT credentials, I think is necessary at this point. But what do I know? Some other things to know about blogs, and they can be turned off. This drives me nuts. Sometimes I'll go into a space and I can't add a blog, and this is true for every type of content except pages. The space admin can turn them off. So it's possible you go into a space, and I don't think this is in data center, it's in cloud, but they can be disabled. And this might be done because your team has decided we don't need this. Can we do the same for team chats? Angie, could you clarify this a bit? I'm unsure what you mean by the same. If you mean put the team chats into a blog, that would be one way to kind of store them and make them more easily searchable. But if you have a further explanation on that, that would help. And folks, if you're looking for this wonderful community in other spots, we do have Discord too, to carry on whatever's going on in the chat here. All right. Now, this will hide existing blog posts. So if you turn these off, so Angie, this is common. I know Slack can be set to like delete, especially personal messages. This would be something if your org has chosen to do. I would maybe be careful and double check with legal or someone. There may be a reason your team doesn't want to do that. That said, on a technical, mechanical level, you can copy and paste things into a blog post and then store it. When you do a project update, how much information do I put into a blog? This might be personal preference, Kari. I'll do things like a too long didn't read at the top, like 4 bullet points explaining it. And then I'll just put a quick summary of what happened during the week. And then I'll link to Jira tickets or Confluence pages to pull things in. Amy keeps things for 2 weeks. Again, my only concern there, Amy, is if for some reason your legal team has said, no, 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 everything should be deleted, you don't want to run afoul of legal. So that would be the challenge. Uh, okay, so we can disable blogs. So if you don't see it in create, and if this is done, existing blogs aren't deleted. They're essentially just hidden, but it will prevent folks from making new ones. So this is a big caveat and a big frustration. I'll tell people about blogs, they get real excited about it, and they go, Rob, it doesn't exist. Can we limit access to just the blog post? Jessica, I'm going to, if you could clarify this, do you mean the ability to create a blog post or the ability to view? Yeah, and I'll write down this question so I don't forget about it. Our chats, I I understand what you're saying, Angie. I'm just always paranoid when I hear there's some restriction like messages delete. I always immediately wonder, why does that happen, and does legal have some particular reason for that? So I just want to call that out. Of course, you can put them in there. It just may not be the best in a given environment. Does everyone that reviews the blog in Confluence have to have a license? Yes and no. And I'm giving you a bad answer or a confusing answer. We can set up anonymous access in Confluence to surface blogs externally, and then you wouldn't need that license. This does open up the space, though, so it means that other folks can get to it. But typically, that blog post will be like any other piece of content, and you have to have a Confluence license to view it. Jessica, to view the blog. Blogs do support restrictions, so I'll show you this when we get live, but just like we can restrict a space to view only or no one can see it, we can restrict a blog. Can I publish a blog post to another space? I like this, Barb. What I'll interpret this question to mean, if I put it in Confluence, can it also then show up in SharePoint? I'm not aware of any way to do that natively. So when I say natively, I mean without any add-ons. What I'm going to show you in Confluence Cloud Premium will not have any add-ons. But there might be add-ons that do that, and there might be other ways to share information from Confluence to other sites. So I'm going to write that down. Can we share blogs across sites? I assume you're asking because you happen to use Confluence and other parts of your organization use other things, and you don't want to duplicate your work. That's also an awesome question, Barb, if you're not in the Discord already. And I keep saying that because we've got a big group of real smart people that can help us out in between these sessions. Kythra, thank you for bringing this up, my friend. Kythra has an amazing public-facing Confluence site. I absolutely love how she's using it. Part of it includes blogs, as she's mentioned. And this is where that anonymous access and public sites can help. The thing to be aware of with this is it makes all that content publicly accessible. So some groups may not want to do that. That said, one use case for a blog is something like release notes for a company. So part of a public site could be blogs that are release notes. Can I auto-generate a blog post from a Slack message? I think you have some homework, my friend, and I would love to hear what you find out. You can also convert pages to blogs and blogs to pages. And this helps address a weakness of blogs. Templates don't apply, or at least they didn't last time I looked. So I can go into a page and use a template. Templates aren't connected to blogs. I don't know why. It does not make a lot of sense to me. The workaround is to create a page and then convert the page to a blog and then publish that blog. Very silly. So this brings out the question, like, why use a blog? And these are those use cases we've seen in the chat. It's like, why would I do this? I could just make a page. Now, that's a great question. And a lot of people I talk to just decide to use a page, and there's nothing really wrong with that. It's just a different thing. It has a different setup. My biggest use case for blogs is what I consider point-in-time information. And we've seen some of these in the questions. Things like I have updates. I have something I put in Slack that's just weekly I want to keep track of. And so anytime I'm considering creating a piece of content, I ask myself, will this ever need to change? And how relevant will it be in 3 months? That team update from last Friday is really relevant today, but in 3 months, it'll be a historical curiosity, I'll say. Or is there a team event? Hey, team, we had this great offsite. Here's what we did. That probably doesn't need to be a page. That it probably doesn't need to live in the content hierarchy forever. That could be a blog post detailing what we did, and then later we could go back and look at it to plan the next one, for example. Personally, my biggest use case is the weekly updates. I work in project management quite a bit, and I'll use blogs to push out the update. And then I can easily see chronologically where they are, and then I sort them using labels, something I'll show us when we get live, to help break out the content and then sort it by project or team. So I guess another question, what's your biggest frustration? And I'll put a caveat in there, in Confluence. Not just blogs in general. For me, the biggest frustration is that folks don't know it exists, or they don't use it. Emily nailed it. No automation to third-party blogs. Interesting. So I assume, Liz, this was, I forget who had the question, can we push this to another blog, another system, another site, another platform? Ooh, SEM, super efficient management rush. I love it. And SEO, I know what that one means. One of my favorite pastimes is making up acronyms if I don't know what they are. Users not engaging with it. So this is a common challenge with any content. How do we get someone to go open the thing we made? And then how do we get them to read it? For me, this is all the things around using a tool. I dropped a link earlier for Amy. Oopsies. That link goes to a knowledge base course that covers the concepts and processes and ideas around how to get engagement in things. So that's a deep dive into this topic. But this is where it's not about the tool we use. It's about how we engage with our audience. How do we educate our team on here's where the content's going to be? And there's many ways to approach this. Barb, the bane of the tech writer's existence. We can't force them to, but we can encourage. And we can think through how do we strategize and how do we talk to team leads to help them go do that. So it does take a lot of work. And this is where it can feel like, pushing rope is the term. It just doesn't go anywhere. What I've done that has been successful is I found a few folks who are interested in it, and I make them kind of my super fans. And then I have them help me spread the word. So I amplify myself. I don't just be the only person. My biggest frustration on a technical level is I forget to put a title, and blogs won't default the title. So you'll just get this message, and you'll have to go fix it. The exception is if you happen to have Atlassian Intelligence turned on, so Premier Enterprise and it's enabled, you'll end up with this message where it will guess a title. Hooray! I'm trying to get in a better habit of adding the title to the page and typing it in. As soon as I make it. You will see in my demo instance a whole lot of pages called Untitled Draft and Untitled Blog. Now, I mentioned earlier they're very similar to pages, so our editing options are basically the same. We've got headers, we've got formatting, we've got all the beautiful colors. You'll see me alternate between American spellings and British English spellings. I'm also Canadian, so you'll see me slam that U in there. Sorry, Kythra. Every once in a while, just as bad habit and or just to be different. We get our lists and our indents, and then I call this special stuff. We've got our things like our tasks, like our attachments, our links, our app mentions, our emojis, our layouts, etc. So again, if you're just looking at this, thank you for helping me out there, Dave. The term pushing rope, as I understand it, imagine you've got a rope laid down on the floor and you push one end. The rope doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of bunches up on it. Liz, yes, getting buy-in from folks, from leadership is the thing. Why is the fact that I'm Canadian a thing? All right, we're about to jump in. Kythra. but they make the header. Fine. We are going to jump into Confluence Cloud Premium in just a minute. I do need some help though, and this is just a quick survey. It's to figure out what else we should learn or what else we should do. You spelled it right. Thank you, Justin. Now, I will keep doing these sessions, but I would love your feedback on what specific topics do you want. For example, I picked blogs because I know not a lot of people understand them, but are there specific things you really want to learn about? Amy, thank you so much for coming. Have a great day. Glad you could join us. And this recording will, of course, be available along with many others. I've dropped that link in the chat. So if you have a minute, I would love your feedback. Rovo, what is Rovo? Yes, Dave. Kyther, I really appreciate that. Who is Sid? What? Anyway, so please take a moment. Let me know what you think of these sessions. How can I make them better for you? I've already heard feedback like getting more hands-on time with things that I'm working on. You'll have a series on searching for things in Jira that I'm adding more sessions to just to give more folks hands-on time. I'm doing things like putting quizzes together, other things like that to help you all learn better and get more info. So we are now in Confluence Cloud Premium. One of the big things you'll notice is our wonderful navigation bars on the side now. This is rolling out. It may still be on the top for you. I'm going to use the new UI. Just be aware that at some point in the near future, you will be forced to use it. The biggest difference is it's on the left, not the right. I've got a quick video explaining what the differences are, just in case you're curious about what's going on. So blogs, as I mentioned, are in a single space. So if I open up this space called HeenTech, and I scroll to the bottom, I don't have many blogs. Let me find a different space that's better. Excuse me. I think it's this one. There we go. So under my content hierarchy, and this is where all of my pages, my databases, my whiteboards live, I have a section on blogs. And I can see here it's different. The content hierarchy will be organized based on parent and child. For example, if I have a page called How to Create a Page, there might be children under it that have more information or relate to it. So it's a way of logically organizing things. Again, think of our library analogy. This could be bookshelves that help organize the space. So under that, though, I have blogs, and I can collapse the whole thing, or I can expand it, and then I can see it's organized by year. So I can see blogs from 2024. Now, I don't have many blogs in here. I think it will break it out by month if there's enough of them. I'll have to double check on that, though. I might have been hallucinating that. But here I can easily see, okay, I don't care about 2024. I'll close that. Oh, here's something about runbook architecture. Oh, that's our great team update. So right away, I have a different spot I have to go. And this is what a lot of folks have mentioned in the chat. That's hard to figure out, like, how do I get my people to read it? And that's where it's education. We have to go tell people, hey, scroll down to the bottom. There's a blog there. Now, I won't share that idea quite yet. I have a very good idea to help folks out here, but I'm going to hang on to it and keep it mine until I make it good. And this is where maybe you just put out in Slack, hey team, just as a reminder, my updates are going to live in blogs in this space. Here is a link to them. So this is just where they live. Now I mentioned they can be turned off. If I'm a space admin, if I have administrative privilege in the system for the space, I can open up space settings. And then under general and features, I can go turn them on or off. So if I turn this off, it doesn't look like anything happened. And then if I go back to my space, there's no more blogs. They're just gone. So again, this is a massive frustration. People will go in and try and find it, and it just straight up doesn't exist. If you don't see it, you'll need to talk to a space administrator. And you can always figure out who they are by clicking on these three dots for the space, and then going to space settings. And then right here, it's got a list of space admins. You may not see as much stuff in here. You may just see space admins and a few other things. But if I click view all admins, I'll see all the people who could help me. So I could go to any one of these people and say, hey, Lauren, could you please help me understand why blogs are turned off? I need to use them. And they could help you. Now, if I turn this back on, as I mentioned, it doesn't delete my blogs. It just hid them. So I'll have them back. So that's where they live. Oh, I've got some chat. What am I missing here? I'm working on something on Rovo Agents, Emily, and there's also some great other live learning in the community-led sessions. I was wondering why you have 99 blogs, but I think that a closing double quote mark. Barb is referring to, I don't know what to call these symbols. I call the second one a single double quote, and that confuses people. So I don't understand what to call those things. And now Emily H is just putting random symbols in the chat, which is very helpful. Thank you, my friend. Exactly, Dave. What are we doing? I don't know anymore. Now, another way to find blogs is through macros. So we can direct people down to the bottom. But if I have a page, I could even do this on a blog, but I'll demonstrate this on a page, and I do a / in the word blog. I have this option for blog posts. Now, this pulls up the most recent posts in the space I happen to be in. So this is one way we can make it more easy to access. Now, I can see it's giving me the entire blog post pretty much. I have a blog post here with nothing on it. But if I go in and edit this macro, and I click on this little tiny pencil hidden way down here for some reason, I can control what's shown. So maybe I only want excerpts. And if I hit preview, I'll see what that would look like. Yeah, that looks a bit cleaner. I can do a time frame, maybe only blog posts from the past 4 weeks, 4W. I'll refresh that again, my list will get shorter. Maybe it's only certain labels. So again, this is where if I have project updates and every blog has a label, which we'll add in just a minute, with the name of the project, that would pull up right here. So I can then give people a list of these updates. So I think it was Dave had challenges figuring it out, or figuring out how to share these, sorry. This macro, the blog post macro, is one way. You can restrict it to certain authors or just certain spaces and sort it. So this is one way to surface them. It's similar to the content by label macro in building an index of what you have. And again, I found that either by doing the / and typing the word blog, or by clicking this little plus in the top here and typing in blog. And that then lets me surface blog posts a little bit more easily. I'll get rid of this draft so I don't end up with a bunch of ugly drafts. So now to create a blog, all I'll do is click create, and I'll go up to my blog. Whoops, and I'm zoomed in way too far. Let me do that again. There we go. So create and plus blog. I can do the same thing by going to blogs under the content hierarchy and clicking on this little plus. Now, I mentioned you'll notice this looks exactly like a page, and you're correct. The only difference is the default title is blog post instead of page. So I'll give it some kind of name. Maybe I'll call this Know Your Content Blog Posts Review. So one use case could be after each one of these live learnings, I have a blog post in my Confluence space that follows up on what's going on. Dave, we can. I like that question. I'm going to add a label to this blog, and we'll use this exact blog to go feed that macro something. Now to add the label, I'll have to come up to my more actions, which is super annoying. It's hidden under add labels. And maybe I'll add KYC, know your content, and the word blog. Labels are just additional pieces of information for content. They mainly interact with things like search and macros to help surface content. But they can also be super frustrating because if I have someone who comes in and they accidentally put a space in the word blog, that is now a label. Or if I have someone misspell it, B-O-L-G, I now have a label that's bolg instead of blog. So I think labels are a very good thing. They help us organize what we have. They do require management though. It's not a magic wand. It's something that we have to actively look at. And that's where many groups run into challenges. They don't make the time to sit down and manage them. So I've added some labels to this, and then I'm just going to add some content. The KYC event went well. One thing you'll notice it's missing. They're not hidden, Dave. They're just hiding. Yes, Now, if I publish this, I think I still have... Yeah, it's more visible after you publish, right at the bottom here. And if you hit the L button on your keyboard, that'll access the labels menu. But while you're editing, it's not immediately visible, so most folks miss it, which is super annoying. Now, I mentioned there are no templates in blogs, and this to me is one of the biggest downsides. There's no way to templatize this. So the workaround I have used is I'll make a page. So I went up to create, make a page. I'll give it some title, blog post template. I'll use a template to make the blog post. I'll publish it. Is this going to work? This used to work. Here we go. All right. And then when I go to publish it, I'm going to look for this more actions, hit more options. And then I have this publish as option. So this will put it in as a blog post that will have let me use that template. So this is a very long, annoying way of doing it. Isn't templatize a word? I thought templatize was a word. This is the only way I have found to easily templatize a blog post. And this is another reason many folks choose not to use it, because it's extra steps. It's something that gets in the way of their ability to make their content. So honestly, what I tend to do is I will have a blog post that is set up the way I want, and I'll just copy and paste it, which does the job, but it's very non-ideal. So I've started making a page and then just publishing it as a blog. It does require me to remember to do that, though. Justin is being very sarcastic. There's tons of workarounds everywhere. Barb, typically what I do is I'll take a blog that's been filled out. So I might take... do any of these have anything? Here we go. Pretend this was filled out. I would just do something like edit it, Command A, Command copy, create, and then make a blog. So it's a very ugly way of doing it, but it gets the job done. Going back to my blog example, I need to add some content. KYC blog. Oh no, there it is. Okay, good. We can discard that. This is what I meant earlier. Please name your blogs. Otherwise, you'll end up with a lot of blog example, draft, or other things. Let me publish this. Now, another thing to notice with this blog post, it doesn't have the same more items or more actions. So if I go to a page, even a draft page, I have this little more actions menu. I don't have that for blogs. It just doesn't exist. Up in the top right, I get these 3 dots that have similar options, but there is no archive for blogs. So that's something else to consider that I didn't have in the slides. I can delete it, but I can't archive it. That to me kind of makes sense. I want the blogs to be sorted chronologically, and I want them all to be in one spot. So they're different than a page or other piece of content. I don't need to archive them because I want them there so I can review them. But Kythra, this takes work, and I'm very lazy. It's much easier for me just to leave piles of draft documents floating around everywhere. Someone had questions on access to blogs. I'm going to go back up to my space settings very quickly. So again, my 3 dots, space settings. Blogs do have their own permission set. So here I'm looking for space access. What I'm showing you requires you to be a space administrator or space admin. But if we look in the middle of this, we'll notice that there's pages, whiteboards, dashboards, and smart links have their own options for add, delete, and archive. Blogs are different. I can't explain why other than blogs are a separate feature. It does... I appreciate this granularity, and I would prefer it, honestly, with every content type. The systems I tend to work with allow me to control who can add a page or a whiteboard, not all in one group, like as examples. But here, we can turn off... wow. Oh, there certainly is. But again, I have to set up the automation, my friend. My laziness is very deep. Here I can restrict the ability to add or delete blogs. So one thing I might do is give my team the ability to add them but not delete them. Or maybe I just give a few people on my team the ability to add them, depending on the space and the need. So I have a little bit of control here over creating it. What I can't easily do here is control view access. That would require me to go to the blogs themselves. And I do have the share menu. This is moved a little bit. So here I am on a blog, and share has replaced restrictions. So if I open up share, right in the middle I'll have the ability to restrict. And then I can choose how to restrict. So I'll just pick Amanda. Amanda can view it. And now if I open this back up, I'll see only Amanda and I can do anything with this. This is a bit annoying. I can't really do this until after the blog is published. You can automate this. I think I have a trick somewhere on YouTube of having an automation kick off when you first do this to auto-restrict the page. But this is how you can restrict the view access. We also had a question on public access, and I'll remove this real quick and bring this back. And this space is not set up for that, but we do have our Slack sharing. Now, we don't have Slack set up in this instance, but this is one way to push it to Slack very easily and to make sure it can get there. All right, we talked about labels. I think it was Dave had a question on them. Here I've got my example blog post with my two labels, KYC and blog. If I go back to my macro, so I'm going to go create a page, and I'll use the macro menu, or elements I think they call it, blog posts. I can see them right at the top, my two new ones. So I have to go to the edit, oops, and not replace it with that symbol. Click on edit. There we go. I have right in the middle restrict to labels. So this will take it down to just the single one that we had. And I can use multiple labels, and I believe this gets more restrictive. I don't know if I have any with engineering. Oh, it's an or. Okay, good. So it looks like, Dave, if I do this, it's going to give me anything with KYC or engineering. So this is, again, another way to filter down what I show with the blogs to make it a bit easier to share out. I'm going to double check the chat because I've seen a lot of stuff going on, but I can't tell if there's questions in there. Hiding labels, yes, you gotta dig them up, which is just annoying these days. All right, folks, what other questions do you have on blogs while I'm reviewing this to see what I might have missed? Besides Emily just typing random symbols into our chat. Rovo we asked about. Kyther, good point with the macros. Now, this blog post macro does support excerpts. I like excerpts. They're an option right here to what to show. The trick with excerpts is we have to set them up, and to Kyther's point, they strip out formatting. So I'm going to go back to our KYC blog post real quick. I'll just save this as a quick example, blog post list. And that macro, just to clarify, can be put into any page anywhere. It doesn't have to only have that blog list. I've seen many groups use it on their space homepage. So the first thing you see is welcome to the human resources team or welcome to engineering. Check out our weekly updates here. Check out our team members here. Check out our active projects. So it's one part of a broader way to share content. So the excerpt, I'm on a page, is just another macro. And it just shows up as a box, and I'll have to put something in here. And I have two options with it. I can give it a name. I'll call this one example. And I can choose to hide what's in it. Sometimes I do this if I don't want that to show up. Typically, though, I show it. But once I publish, you're just going to see that whatever's in the excerpt. Now I'm going to go back, because Kythro mentioned it strips out things like formatting. I'll just put in some examples here. And I'm glad I caught that, Kythro. Thank you for the call out. Italics, bold. Woo. So, again, you wouldn't know this is in an excerpt. Is that actually in there? Good. Okay. If I go back to my, where'd you go? Blog post list, and I go in and edit this, what I'm going to get is just the excerpt stripped off the page. So instead of the whole page, like I get if I select entire content, and if I refresh, we're going to see everything in that blog post. The KYC event went well. This was the text outside the excerpt. If I change this to excerpt, it's going to pull in just the excerpt. I use this a lot for how-to articles. I have an excerpt at the top that briefly describes what it is, and a quick breakdown of what's in the content. And so then when I pull it into other macros like blog post, I only show that part, and that lets people know, hey, is this interesting? Should I go look at this? Something about smashing emojis. Don't hurt the emojis, Dave. What'd they do to you? They had that terrible movie, but that's beside the point. So this is another great trick for content and to help engagement. If folks look at this list and they just see a list of blog posts, blog example, they're going to, I don't want to go look at that. But if they look at it and they go, oh, here's a quick, 2 lines explaining what's in here or why it's interesting, then they might want to click on that link to go read it and see what's going on. All right, folks, we're in the last 7 minutes. I'm going to teleport back into my slides. I've mentioned this course a couple of times and my big fat head's in the way, so let me get it over there. I've put together a 4-hour course just on using Confluence. It includes blogs and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'll drop that link in there if y'all are interested. And this is a discount code. So you'll get it at a nice cheap rate. And then I've also got a separate one on knowledge bases. And so the difference there is this one is more about the tools in Confluence. The knowledge base one is more about how to set up a knowledge base and the processes around that, including getting engagement, getting champions, etc. Kythro, what is so obvious? It's not obvious to me. Please help me out. So please check out those Udemy courses. And if you're interested in them and can't afford them for any reason, please let me know. Here is my contact info in the bottom left. Again, my big fat head is in the way. I'll expand my big fat head. Whee! But please pop me an email. I'll be happy to help answer questions or help provide resources in terms of continuing to use these tools. My goal is that folks aren't frustrated using things like Confluence. We don't go to our jobs to do Confluence. We go to our jobs to be finance experts or content creators or engineers or HR experts or anything other than fighting with a system. Oh, gotcha. Yes, I use it as a little preview, Kythra. But please shoot me an email with your frustrations with it or your use cases if you need help. We also have that Discord group, which I've mentioned a couple times. Most of the people you saw live in chat are in there, and they have a lot of great experience in different ways to use the tools. And that is a big, important thing to remember. There are many different perspectives on how to use these things. So the more people we can go talk to and learn from, the better we get at it. So review this recording on blogs, but please get hands-on. Go into Confluence right after this and just make a blog post or two. And just see what it's like and talk to your team. Hey, could this be useful? Also check out the rest of my content on YouTube. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm trying to do regular videos, regular live learnings, etc. But check out other people's content as well. Again, I am just one person. I have my own perspective, which is good for Rob and hopefully good for all of you. But there are many, many other smart people out there, like my friend Kythro, who uses it as a portfolio, which is amazing. There's also the Atlassian community. That is a great online forum, learning center, etc., where you can go ask questions, you can get updates and things. You'll see me floating around in there just trying to keep up to date on things. But another wonderful spot. And I've mentioned our Discord several times. All right, I'm going to double check the chat and see what else we missed. Something about ants and gargoyles backing up. Blog post automatically published to Slack. I need to shrink my head, don't I? It's way too big. Whee! I wonder, Dave, if we could very quickly go into space settings and automations. I'm going to try and just do this live in a minute, Dave, but I imagine we could have an automation where a blog post is published and then we stuff it into Slack somehow. You'd want to test this. I find it hard to believe there isn't a way to publish a blog post to Slack via automation. And I say that because we have a trigger for blog post is published and we have a action for send Slack message. So I wonder if this would help you out. I don't know what we can put in the message offhand, but we could probably do things like pull the URL of the blog post and insert that as text. You do have to set up an incoming webhook in Slack, which for some folks can be hard if they don't have admin access. So just a heads up there, but tinker with that, and I'd love to see what you can figure out, and I'll see if I have time to mess with it as well. As always, folks, please like and subscribe on the video. That helps me out, but also tell me what you want to learn. Please give me your feedback, your ideas, your thoughts. I will keep creating stuff that I think is useful, but I would much rather create stuff that you ask for so I can meet your need directly. So please reach out and let me know what you got. I think I just broke Dave's mind somehow. I guess. I do want to say thank you, though. About 40 of you stuck around and listened to me talk about blogs for an hour, which I never thought, a few months ago, I never thought anyone would want to do that. So thank you all for learning with me. There's so much more to learn and figure out, though. So please bring your questions, bring your concerns. Come join us